Well, hello there. Here we go. I can become visible here. Welcome to another Monday, another my streams this time cross with the Meteor Dispatches. And this is will be a hot topic with the tragedy of the commons. So that will be our topic. We'll be specifically talking about tragedy of commons in open source, and which has been historically personified by this wonderful image and many could say scandals or uh, events in the past. First of all, I would like to do a quick recap. Alim Ghaffar is also going to be joining me in a few moments as well. So we'll have more lively discussion. And let me make sure that also everybody else interested in this has a chance to join in. First of all, bit of a update personal. You might have noticed that my last two streams have been canceled. This has been because I caught whooping cough, which this morning I had my final medications, or this when it comes to antibiotics, but I still have medication, and I might still be coughing for the next, a week to 3 months, depending on how things go. And so I might need to occasionally take a break to cough. It's not something I can necessarily delay, so it's involuntary. And yes, so apologies in advance for this. Now, to the topic at hand. This topic has been something I and also everybody else has been discussing for quite a while. On the stream, I had actually a dedicated stream to it now 3 or 4 weeks back, out of my head. And we've discussed it also that week a little bit on the Meteor Dispatches. So to kind of summarize the two, or like kind of where we have arrived at and from which where we will be going. So my main thesis is that right now we are slowly seeing, and you could say, or maybe you could say that that's kind of how it kind of became after the initial invention of open source. Kind of this increasing split between, you could say, the hobby projects and work open source. That's the two big changes, or like the big two groups that we have happening, or that are happening in open source. And there's quite a big could I say it kind of big difference. Of course, when you're doing like something for fun, for a hobby, you don't really provide any support, you maintain it as you need it. There's no rush. But then we have what I would right now call the work open source, which has been made to the intent that it's for work to achieve something. Of course, use it pretty much everywhere, and also a lot of work. The big difference is that there is certain expectation of maintenance, but the problem is that unless you're getting paid for it or you're getting something out of that, you don't have the motivation to maintain it, especially if, for example, you leave the framework or you change jobs and no longer have the time to do it as part of your work. So any maintenance is gonna have to come on your own time and dime, and especially like if you decide to change for your free time, what you are working on, like a different framework, then that of course has a uh, negative impact on that as well. Or pretty much that means that at that point the project becomes abandoned, uh, which then of course starts escalating if you have more people using it, and that's kind of where we get into the problem. And I think kind of that's these small projects that I would classify as work open source, that are not big enough to have enough people to maintain it. Another part of that is benevolent dictator for life. So you as the creator have access to all the publishing and all the tools around it. So if you leave, then suddenly nobody else has that access, or maybe you don't trust anybody to get that access, or you just don't care. So that's usually where we get a lot of the problems, and Alan is going to cover the most recent let's say story that happened about this, and kind of go more into that. So that's kind of one part of this. These small to mid-size work open source projects that are at a danger of very quickly disappearing. Then on the other side of this spectrum is the large projects that are not initially in a threat of disappearing. So that's the big, let's say, potentially well-funded projects, but then suddenly we have even a big giant who doesn't play nice come in, and it's suddenly everything, how should I say that, like things change, that even though you have let's say secure funding, things are going well, and then suddenly you see that your funding, for example, you provide hosting for the open source or stuff like that, suddenly you see that your funding, or that your money is decreasing, that your hosting isn't growing, and you have increased the numbers of request issues and everything, which doesn't correlate to the funding that you should be getting, based on that you now have this additional income, and or additional increase of requests, all that stuff. So then that leads to that you eventually discover, the big hosting company suddenly integrated our software. Okay, that's nice, it's open source, good for them, but they are not contributing anything back at all. Not their engineering resources. They don't even bother or at the best they are bothering only raising issues, and they don't contribute any engineering resources or money to help fix those issues, and expect us that to fix it, and they get increasingly annoying if we don't. And we have seen this with I would say that there are three big examples: Faker, MongoDB, and Redis. With the last, or like with MongoDB, it was Amazon, and Faker was another service, and that eventually led to creation of dual licensing. So those are kind of the two that I have been seeing. And finally, Alim has arrived. Hi, Alim.
Hey, folks. How you doing? It's early. It's not that early. It's like 10 o'clock here in New York, but I still feel it's early because I was up pretty late last night. I wonder if I was up partying. And I was going to say, perhaps if you call like hanging out with a cat at 4 o'clock in the morning partying, then I was partying really hard. But, it's just one of those nights where I wasn't quite sure actually that this program was going to come on because you were sick just a couple of days ago.
Yeah, well, I got my last antibiotics this morning, so
good for you. So your voice sounds better, much better than it did the last time I spoke with you. So I'm glad that you're feeling better.
Worst case scenario, I still have 3 months to fully heal. So
3 months of what?
To fully heal. That's the worst. Yeah,
okay.
That's the worst case scenario. And let me let me just use this opportunity to quickly close a window here so we don't have annoyances from outside.
Mm-hmm.
It's much better. So I already started with a recap of kind of the big overview of what we were talking previously.
Yep.
And now I'm kind of going back into the recap. Is kind of maybe a little bit backtracking to the smaller projects again. That today there is a lot of options to be able to sponsor and be involved with open source.
Nice.
So I think there's really hardly any excuses not to do that. But I think what I've seen, could say especially in Western Europe and to a certain degree also in America and in many other places, given the not just demographic change but also general cultural development, there is a loss of high trust societies, which if you look at open source by itself, that open source by definition is a high trust society. Everything is open. We are helping each other, and a lot of the stuff is kind of expected. That people know about the things, and there is not really have that any like police or anybody constantly whenever you go somewhere, okay, you need to sign this.
Yeah, it assumes that everybody is acting in good faith, right? That everybody is a good actor in this environment.
Yeah,
it's I think it's a really interesting observation, by the way, that most social groups having this sort of like high trust cohesion for an extended period of time is really unusual. We've had this in the open source community now for about maybe 20 years. We start seeing a degradation about maybe 5 years ago in terms of the level of trust, in terms of people violating those norms. Big companies. Yeah, go ahead. Continue with your.
Apologies for this. I would say it's not unusual. It's
I think it's very unusual.
I think from your cultural point of view, but take places like Japan, like even here in Czechia, homogeneous cultures are usually high trust societies, where the more differences you have, the more say things are not smooth in the society, the more you don't have as high trust societies. You have becoming the opposite. That's why I also see communism being so destructive to cultures, because it pretty much creates the state of constant fear and backing. You by definition cannot trust anybody, because you don't know who is with the secret police and all that stuff. So and of course say societies where there's a lot of conflict with other groups, but even then usually the inner group has very tight knit together. And I've seen it through multiple cases where they are constantly going at each other, but when somebody from outside comes in,
Sure.
they immediately turn and eat that guy alive. So that's there's a lot of that stuff. So it's also like very different to look at and I kind of compare that. Would you send your child, say 6-year-old, across the entire city to go to a school at the other end of the city? And for example, in Japan, like 6-year-old, like 3 years old, go and do chores, and it's normal. While and I think that's kind of the biggest showcase of high trust society. And then as you go from that, then I think kind of measure the trust in the society. Also, it's also kind of can measure, I think, business wise, how many agreements and legal controls do you need? Do you need to do business and other stuff? So the less do you need, then the higher the trust. And of course, usually it's like in Europe, the more east you go into the post-communist country, the more you need it, because there is just so many crooks around that you need as much security as you can get.
Yeah, this is hard for me because I'm not a sociologist. I don't know how all of these things work. I never took a sociology class, so I don't really have a good understanding of the how these have been studied and actual data has been observed. So a lot of what I might say is just from my personal observation and my own thought process. Right? It's here's the thing. I mean, I think you make some good points there, but I don't think that's entirely and universally true, because when I sit down and I try to think about it, there are many societies, for instance, homogenous societies, that don't necessarily have good and well functioning rules, legal frameworks, and
well, you are correct there. It's not just the homogeneous aspects of it, but
or even like good economies, because the thing is, like, when you take a look at some of these countries that have a homogenous society, they may have very poorly functioning economic markets, and so they have to rely on the black market in order to get things done, right? And within that, there is cheating, there's lying, there's stealing, there's lots of things that are being done, which erodes trust. So there to me, it's a very complicated set of circumstances, and I don't know
that's what I meant with it's not just about like you could say ethnical group or cultural group, but all these things, ethnicity, religion, politics, to a lesser or greater degree depending on how much that's important, economics plays a role, and none of these by themselves alone are crucial. It is the combination. So even if, for example, you have bad economics, but you have high, family cohesion or community cohesion, then it will still be a high trust society, because, for example, you can get on the market, but through your network of or the communal network, you will still be able to get what you need, even though it's officially on the black market, you could say. So there's a lot of the things, and that's, I think, also kind of to keep in mind as we go forward here. that it's never just one thing by themselves, but usually it can escalate, or it can be like that one thing that finally the final straw that comes in, and and whoever says, okay, so bangs the gavel. Okay, this is enough. Time for more stronger action.
Okay, I'm
So-
moving some stuff around right now. I
Mhm.
apologize for this. And now I'm realizing that the camera that's being used here is the wrong camera. I gotta change it out.
Need to get the one that makes you look pretty.
Oh, I don't know if it makes me look pretty, but
Oh, it's
the better
amazing.
camera.
Yeah.
It's the better camera.
I will probably, once I move,
There we go.
I will get invested into that one as well.
Yeah,
So-
when I set the whole thing up and it's not the one that's being used, that's a little annoying. So I didn't realize that StreamYard just automatically took the computer camera, which is not bad, but this one's better.
Yeah.
And
to kind of close this, apologies, introduction down, is that I believe that open source cannot survive outside or in low trust societies, because the trust is crucial. All the other social norms that we create around it underpin it. And actually, even if we again go back to this legendary picture, it's
that's the one.
Yeah, I have another great one as well for this, which we'll get later. But this is not just maybe for open source, but even for societies in general. And this might be making bigger point, and I'll try to kind of put it together here for open source as well. There is a lot of societal constructs and other little things that underpin the current system we have, and some of them are more robust than others. And if you then just go and start taking away this thing without doing proper analysis and checking, it's like I just removed this dependency and the entire application crashes because it's why did you remove Babel? Stuff like that. So, and the same thing goes for societies. It's I would say a warning that I came. Be very careful on what you from the tradition, what you start taking out, because it might be, even though it might not appear at first, it might be the critical piece that's preventing this thing all from falling apart, as crazy or as insane it might look at that time, unless you really take the time to really analyze it properly, with the mindset not of what you want to see, but what actually is, which is a common mistake that people they approach it with their already preconceived notions and conclusions, and then oftentimes just go around to justify those conclusions without really stepping back and analyzing things as they actually are. And sometimes it's not possible, because you might not have the knowledge and understanding, and especially with these complex structures, it's which society is, you never know. It's very difficult to know that. That's actually something that computer models and AIs have been a little bit better kind of shedding light on, but then again, usually the issue is imperfect data. So that's another thing.
Yeah, this is one of those things where, like, when we're talking right now, and we're saying high trust societies, low trust societies, and so on, and we're talking about homogeneous societies, we're talking about nation state societies for the most part, right? That we were chatting about. And now we're talking about open source, and we're talking about social norms and so on. what is the society that we're talking about in open source? Is it the community of developers? Is it, the people that are using it? Is it all of those things? Or are we thinking about nation states also, and the people that are from those nation states participating here? I mean, what's the boundary? How do we describe the society that we're trying to have this discussion on? That's
Yeah.
a little confusing to me.
Well, it's a difficult answer. But 1 year ago, I would have probably a nice answer.
Hmm.
This year, I think it got very complicated, and it kind of gets us into our first concrete example, or like deep dive, which Yualim has prepared about the XZ backdoor.
Right.
So why don't you tell us more about it as
Okay.
I try to drink something.
Yeah. So, hang on a second. Oh, using the wrong mouse. And so the XC backdoor there is this compression algorithm, this utility that is used in a lot of different pieces of software. It's one of these tiny foundational pieces, as the diagram purports to show in the cartoon, that many other projects and applications are built on. The precise on this is that the developer that has been working on it has, although there's a small community that is supposedly the open source group that supports this application or this utility, the founder, creator, author, is or was the sole maintainer, for all intents and purposes, of this tool. And it is a highly dependent tool, and he worked on it, I believe, and I'll have to check. And when I check after we take a little break here from my talking, I believe that. Thank you for finding that. I believe that he's not compensated for the work that he does on this. In any case, he took on somebody who offered to help and allowed them to work on it, and they worked, I think, in good faith for a while on the project. And then he took a little break. I don't remember if it was a vacation or whatever, but he took a little break. And after he took that, and while he was away on break, there were a few changes that were introduced that actually compromised the security of the utility. As a matter of fact, it was a deliberate sabotage in the sense of its security.
Correct.
And it
I,
was
I just add to it. It wasn't like even anything in the code that was in the repository, which is why it was so nefarious, because it was something that was added in the specific build process. So if you download the code and compile it yourself locally, you would not be affected. And it was, I think, a Microsoft employee who was noticed that
that's right.
it's taking a few milliseconds longer than he thought it should. So he went
That's
in
what I
and
was
started
getting to.
debugging.
Yes. So it was somebody in the user community who actually, discovered that there was something going on with it, and then basically backtracked through the changes that had been implemented and figured out that there was this thing going on, and then recruited a large number of other folks to actually go back into the code base and check it out and to work on it. In the meantime, you know, this became, I think, sort of the herald. I'm trying to find the words right now. I'm not finding the right words, but it became sort of the vanguard to say, hey, by the way, there's a lot of risk to this code that we all use, and the ZX, was it ZX? I always
XZ.
confuse XZ, ZX. I can never quite remember which two letters it is.
XZ.
XZ. So the XZ exploit that we're talking about here became the foundation for this discussions that started to come in and say, hey, wait a minute, we build a lot of our software on the backs of tools that are provided for free by others, who maybe out of frustration, maybe they might get some help as they did in this case with somebody that was not properly vetted, or seemed to have been properly vetted but had some nefarious objectives in mind, and it leaves everything downstream vulnerable. And I think the question was, how do we guard against these types of things? How do we solve for this? And part of it, I think, part of the vulnerability here was the fact that here was this one guy on who, like Atlas, the mountains were on his shoulders, right? And he needed some relief. And when he got some relief, it turned out to be somebody that, was not trustworthy. So I think this opened up a long conversation about, how do we take care of projects and the people that work on them so that we don't run into these situations where they become open to these types of vulnerabilities and the projects don't become open to these types of vulnerabilities. And I think this is one of the reasons why we're having this conversation here, because within the Meet Your Open Source community itself, topics like this come up from time to time. It's, there are people that in the community that build their applications, their projects, and so on, and Meteor, and we want them to do that. And we want them to get the benefit of being able to say, hey, I built my e-commerce application on this and it works, and that's great, and I'm able to make a living from it. But do they have an obligation, whether it's moral or otherwise, to the people that are working for free on software to ensure that their applications are as robust and as secure as possible? I think this is one of the fundamental issues that we're trying to address in this conversation today. And as Storytellers has hinted, when he thinks about it, it goes much deeper than just that surface question, because it really calls into question the structure of the society that is there to support this in the first place. And again, my question is, well, how do we define that society? I will tell you, by the way, my first grasp, but my first attempt at this is to say that the society that we're talking about, tends to be based around the project. So there is the open source community at large that adheres to, and when we talk about this, we're talking about developers. I'm talking specifically about the developers that, because I think they're layers, and I'm going to, if you give me a moment, I'll give you a chance, and give me a little chance, I'll explain what those layers are. But the core of it are the developers that put their time and effort into making open source software and making it available to others to use. And
so that's the inner circle.
That's the foundational, I think, right? And so, within that group, we have this bad actor that came in, and he was part of that, or purported to be part of that broke the trust of that inner group, right? And that is really, I think, part of it. The second part is the user base, the people that actually take those particular components and add it into their software, right? And that's what I call the user base, because that's a different thing than the next layer, which are people that build applications on top of things that use these things. Sometimes they can blend in. And then finally, they're the people that get the benefit of it, the customers, the folks that interact with the software. They are far removed from that foundational layer. But, in some ways, do they have an obligation? Do they have a responsibility? These people are sort of asking for like the cheapest transaction possible, right? They want to buy something, but the transaction which the software enables to get to it has costs. And when we build our applications with open source software, we're saying, well, we're going to mitigate some of those costs by using free software. But what we hope we get as part of the contract from the people in that inner core is that you're going to try to build your software as securely as possible, as robustly as possible. And in turn, part of a contract is we're going to use it to build our applications because we trust the value that you're creating there. And then we're going to pass that cost savings on to our customers. It's a really, I don't know that this is the best analysis and explanation. This is my analysis and explanation as I'm seeing it on a very, very surface, um, examination. I haven't sat down and tried to write this out entirely. I've made some notes. I've flipboarded some articles that kind of conform to that kind of meet these observations, and so that's kind of where I am with this. And my problem now is that who's responsible for in the stack for making sure that the folks at the very bottom that are building these things are not exploited, because this is in a sense a very exploited regime. Now, in that inner circle, you have, it's not just the individual, sort of like superhero developer that's developing software for free and then offering it up. There is that, but we have a clear panoply of different players here. We have also the corporate developer, the Facebook developers, for instance, or the Amazon AWS developers that are writing in open source projects and adding to it. By the way, I know that AWS is like they take and
we'll get to them,
but it almost feels like they reluctantly give, right? It's if it doesn't benefit them, they're not giving, but they're certainly taking a lot of projects that they had no hand in and saying, let's servicize. Let's make this into services that we can make money from, and the original authors are not part of that economic extraction whatsoever. They get nothing back typically from Amazon, unless Amazon says at some point, oh, this is so critical to us that we're going to add some developers into it and we'll pay our developers. So there are these corporate paid developers that work on open source projects, and that is one group, and they get compensated for it. And so they're taken care of. And the companies behind those projects know it's in their own self-interest to make sure that it's robust and secure, and they make sure that they have resources on it for that. But again, as it is in the case of this XZ project, there were distances removed from that. And corporate applications that are building on top of this, as in the case of this gentleman from Microsoft, right? Didn't really think much about this particular subproject. And so the economic benefit never went to this person. Microsoft is extracting value. I'm not knocking Microsoft. Microsoft is not the only company in the space here that was extracting value. Really, this is a very largely used subcomponent. So pretty much everybody that was actually using it in some way was extracting value, but this developer wasn't getting any of it, right? So we have, on the one extreme, we have the developer that is toiling away on their own on a project that is so dependent on everybody else. And I guess because of their own personal integrity and their belief that they need to support what they've already built, they continue to do so, even though they're not getting compensated for their time on it. And I think there are a couple of things that come out of it. One is just the feeling that, I built something, people are using it, and folks are really ungrateful. And if you remember, I think this was a view that the developer for Faker.js,
yes,
right,
we'll get to that later as well.
right, this was, it wasn't so much economic. It was a sense that, look, everybody's using my stuff, nobody even says thank you to me. And that's sort of a basic human thing too. Some people do the development because they expect that it's going to result in some work, maybe some paid work later on. Some people do it because it makes their life easy. And by the way, if anybody else can benefit from it, I'm willing to share it. And some people do it because, look, they've done something and they want some recognition, just a little pat on the back, and if you don't get at least that, then you feel like you're slaving away for other people's benefit, and you're not even being recognized for it. And I think that's
and in case of Faker, it was pretty much for other people's benefit. Other people were taking
Right.
benefit from that. So I think what kind of got me there, just like maybe thinking or how to describe it, about maybe like some initial what should we call it? Initial like community, like a creed or something which kind of gets us into, I could say, the first big how should I call it, big sensational news
Yeah.
in with like with the JavaScript ecosystem, which was LeftPad.
Yeah.
And it was 2016, I think. At least according that's where it was published. I think it might have been. Yeah, that sounds about right. 2016.
Yeah. By the
Was
way,
this?
let me just before we go on to this, let me just inject a piece of information. I implied, by the way, that the fake debacle was only because he wasn't being personally recognized. No, I mean that was a portion of it. It's one of the things that he mentioned. But the other part was
Yeah.
just that he had no financial support for this project everybody was using. All right, let's go on. I'm sorry. I just want to clarify.
So this is kind of the OG, the
Mhm.
original thing. So we had this LeftPad function, which this kind of got into the two things. So one of them is I'll talk what we were talking here in general, or like kind of the creed, but also overuse of simple code like this that should be, that shouldn't really be a package. I would say necessarily, where it's just it's like a small helper function that you should have in your code without much anything. So this was like in thousands of packages, a lot of people using it, and what happened here, and this kind of goes to the what you're talking about, like saying everything, is the author of this package was very much back into the Stallman's 1985 manifesto about this, and there was an issue. He was been working on another package project called Kick, and he was approached by a company called Kick, which supposedly is a messaging.
I used it a long time ago. Yeah, I know it.
So, and they wanted for him to give out the package, so or rename it, because they just wanted the namespace. I don't think they even wanted for like their own or anything like that. Also, this is in the age before namespaces were a thing on NPM, even though in Meteor we already had namespaces. So, and they pretty much came and give us, or we'll send lawyers after you because we have trademark, which so that got I'll just say heated very quickly. I would say classical corporate overreach immediately, especially in a community and society that has this, you could say, relatively radical history or like of manifesto with open source and everything. So coming like in that and throwing lawyers, trademarks, all this stuff generates big animosity, especially for somebody who is one of Stallman's could say people in that aspect. So NPM decided to side with Kick and pretty much stole the package from the original owner, which also in a way it's also kind of controversial, because if then the the package repository or can steal the package and give it to somebody else.
Well, it stole the namespace.
Well, they pretty much took it from and gave it to the company. So it was like, at the end it was like, F you, delete all of my packages, and that included the LeftPad package. So when that happened, majority of JavaScript packages and frameworks just broke overnight. Everybody was like, what the heck just happened? What's going on? So that that was the LeftPad fiasco. Just over this short of code that got deleted, and suddenly, even like React specifically was affected. So there was a lot of fun following that. We need to unpublish, and all that stuff. But the original, kind of principle. Let's see if this LeftPad website is still alive. Which yes, it is.
Really? Did he put it back?
No, this was somebody else. People created it to.
Okay.
Kind of, poke fun out on this entire thing. So, LeftPad as a microservice because of just how crazy it was overused. So it was poking fun on all those things. And I think this is, we can start seeing the transformation here of, the ecosystem and everything, because the roots are in open source, are in the GNU Manifesto. So,
okay,
that's I would say that's the origin,
right?
It's very much America, freedom, centric.
I never understood the phrase "free as in beer." No beer I've ever had was free, so I don't understand what that means.
I think it always got me. Never, I honestly myself as well. I think it's very specific, but it's free as you could suggest that the process of creating it, the receipt behind it, what goes into it is known. So that's free information because you can pick up, see it on the can, and that's there. Which is also kind of like big thing, with this. Free as a beer, that the end product, you can still buy, but you can then go inside and inspect the code. That would be kind of the idea. So the code is freely accessible, and then of course then you get different ideas how what it should be with the usage, which for me, free as a beer means that you can sell the product. So that's I would say the origins of it. Of course, as we come around to LeftPad, that has evolved quite a lot, and now we have to deal. First of all, the community back then, when it started, like 1983 and so on, 1905. You got around by burning it. Back then it was just a floppy disk, so you just put it on a floppy disk and send it out, or you later on you burn a CD or DVD and you put it on USB stick, all that stuff. So it was very, very different world. And
I mean, the distribution is a lot more limited back then, right? It's
exactly. So which is like another thing, with like free as a beer. The code is still free, but you still have to pay for the post, for the medium to send it on. All that stuff. So that's how I think the best way to kind of look at it.
Well, still, I think we go back a little bit on this. I mean, the thing that I think attracted the developer. How do you pronounce his name? Is it Kusulu? Is that how you pronounce?
If I remember correctly, he is Turkish. Let me see, where is his name?
It's
Yeah, I would say Cthulhu, but it's there's this weird C.
yeah,
So
that's why I'm wondering whether it's Cthulhu or Cthulhu, but I'm thinking it might be Cthulhu. In any case,
at least for us,
if,
apologies.
yeah, apologies if I'm mispronouncing it and I repeatedly mispronounce it. But Cthulhu, the thing that was from the manifesto that really appealed to him was the idea that software should be freely shared, like among friends, right?
Yeah.
And I think when you go, as you say, with that limited distribution, you kind of know who's getting it, and you might have even a relationship with them through email or through you're on the same list server, right? You're on the same IRC channel, so you kind of know these people already. But now when we get into a really broader, well, you can download from anywhere and anybody can have it, then the question as to whether or not everybody that's using your software adheres to this notion of like, well, this is a distribution among friends. I built something that's useful and I want to share it with you. You, as the recipient who has no relationship whatsoever, may not even adhere to that philosophy, right? And I think this is part of where it breaks down a bit, because the people that are doing the sharing are not the same people that are doing the consuming necessarily. They don't adhere to the same ideals.
Yep. So that's quite a big. That's actually the issue as the society grows, or like any group grows.
Here's something very, very telling from that article, the Newstack article that you're looking at, right? There is a line in here where he says this situation where he had the dispute with the Kik company. Kik company couldn't resolve it with him. They went to NPM. The CEO of NPM decided to side with Kik. He said to the CEO of NPM, "Hey, we've known each other for a long time. Why are you siding with these corporate assholes?" Right?
Yeah.
Excuse my language. And
well, that's kind of his view.
That's how he said it, right? And so he said, "Look, if this is how it's going to go down, I'm pulling all my stuff." And then he wrote in his article, he said, "This situation made me realize that NPM is someone's private land where corporate is more powerful than the people, and I do open source because power to the people." So it's two different philosophies, right? NPM is distributing these open source items, but it doesn't necessarily adhere to the same open source philosophy. And that was sort of the last straw for him on this. It's like, okay, you're saying, you're providing a service to this open source community, but you're a private entity, and what you say goes, and that's not the philosophy that I'm hearing to. So if that's the case, then my stuff is my stuff. I'm going to take my ball. I'm going to go home. And it's funny because Cthulhu's philosophy, his thought process, his reason for being is, I want to share, and when I share it, I give it to you freely. But now somebody is saying, well, I can play with that in a way, and then he asserts this sort of ownership right, which is really not what he's about. But it's the only way that he could see that he could stop this game from being rigged.
Well, I would say it's like you are not giving it, like, as I said, we're not going like for free, like without any, could say, strings attached or any, I would say, kind of rules. You're giving it in a framework of specific rules. I think that would be the best approximation. So you're expecting the community and a lot of, or pretty much everybody else who is in that to be playing by the rules that have been, say, non-verbally agreed to. And of course, once that breaks down, which usually it tends to, once you start getting lawyers involved. So unless everything is on paper and signed, and notarize all that stuff, then lawyers don't care. So there is, it starts getting complicated and, breaking apart very quickly there. So, and I think this is, we have now, with the MIT license, everything, just giving it for free, no strings attached, but that goes both ways. So I think we are, like, of course, still in the process of growing what I would probably call the next stage, where we start, and I think in a certain way we've kind of started seeing it, where we, especially like with the XZ, where we start seeing that even though I'm giving this out for free, there are strings attached if you are going to use it, and that's like the GPL licenses. And I am leaning, and there are certain things I like about it, certain things I dislike about it. For me is that, if you use, my open source software and make money, I expect, and especially if it's, of big importance or price crucial role in your software, I expect you to be involved with my project, either through sponsorship or through other personal involvement.
Yes, this is where it evolves, right? Because
well, not necessarily. Another thing is, I think if the GPL licenses are, if you fork it, you need to keep the same, license and everything, and also you need to, if you make any changes, fixes, you need to at least send a pull request back to the original repository, which I think is specifically something that I want to do. So if you fix something, in my code, then I expect you to submit that back. So that's why I get very angry if, with people who fork, for example, meteor comedy packages, create, fix something in there, add it under their namespace, publish it, and don't send us a pull request with the fix or with the change. Right. It's a different story if you send a pull request, it's like a new feature and we say, okay, this doesn't align with what we are doing, or it's very specific for applications, doesn't fit. Right. And then you just create this, that's fine. But if you just fix a bug that we have, like maybe even tracked in our issues, you fix it, publish, rename it under your namespace and publish it, and don't send us the fix so that everybody else can benefit from this. That gets me really wound up. So,
is that part of the license requirement if you fork the project?
Depends on the license. With MIT, no. So that's why I'm also because we don't have I don't think we have such, I would say, a permissive license that kind of requires you to be back. This is what I dislike about the GPL licenses, because they are unusable if you have that in like a commercial products, because of how they are structured, especially some of the other variants. That would mean that you have to publish your entire application source code and other things. So they are kind of forcing everybody else to kind of be open source, all that stuff, which I don't like. So I would like a variant of MIT, and maybe if somebody in chat, if you know about it, where it's like, you can use it as you wish, we take no responsibility, but if you fix something in it or make a new feature, it's you need to submit that back.
So the GPL license was an invention from Stallman, right? He wanted to make sure that if you used any open source software and then you derive some benefit from it, and then you had to make all of your code open source. And there's been some tension with this over the years, and which gave rise to for instance, the MIT license. But they're also different, and the Apache license is, I think, another variant of it. And so there are lots of different variants that have come up. The one that I'm quite familiar with, because it became a bit of a a concern, or people got a little flamed about it, was the GNU Affero license, which allowed you to have both open source and commercial. It took care of both parts of the features here with that you could take the stuff and so on and use it for yourself, but also if you're going to do something commercial, you had to compensate for it. And there is on Wikimedia or Wikipedia. Give me 1 second here. I keep doing this in the wrong places. Let me just blow this up a little bit so you could see it a little better. Right there is this. Somebody had put this together on Wikipedia. I think it's a really helpful tool that goes through the different types of open source licenses. And there are many of them now. Some of these I don't even know about.
Yeah.
Actually, many of them I don't know about. And so they've gone through and they've, highlighted the features that may be interesting to you in terms of whether or not it might meet your needs as a starting point. And I would suggest anybody that has skin in the game here, that has an open source project that they're working on, that might say, okay, well, yes, I want to give it out to people. I want them to use it. But if there's a commercial upside, I want to be able to benefit from it. I think you might be able to find something in here that might get you started. There's some licenses here that they say they didn't have enough information to be able to, do this sort of analysis. And there are so many licenses where they just put the word open source in and you're not quite sure. Public source, I don't know what that means. The Sun public license from Sun Microsystems, I think this was very reluctantly published. Open Wacom. There's just so many of them. Oh, look at this. The server-side public license from MongoDB. That was in 2018. So let me go back on this a little bit, because we've talked about the individual developers, but I think, Storytel, to your point, there are folks that are building commercial applications and do write open source software as part of that. I think you're one of those people.
Yeah.
MongoDB was one. And MongoDB had a general open source license. I don't know if it was the MIT license. And what changed things for them was about 2014, 2015, and maybe a little earlier than that, two things happened. One is that Amazon started including MongoDB as a database for free as part of its services. And when I say for free, I mean they charged for it. They charged you to use it, but they weren't paying MongoDB to host it.
Yeah. I need to quickly run to the bathroom.
Sure. You want to take a break right now?
Yeah, I think it's a perfect break. We are 1 hour in.
Okay.
Or if you want to recount the MongoDB story for the audience.
Well, I'm going to do that, but I also need to get some tea, as I think I pointed out to you in the chat before.
Yes. All right. So everybody, we are going to take a quick, maximum 5 minutes, probably shorter break, and then we'll be right back. And I'm going to use that. And since we talked about Stallman, I have another nice comic here to leave for people to enjoy in the 5 minutes that will be away. So I'll be right back.
All right, folks. See you in a minute. And let me stop my
All right, I am back. Night of Blood is upon us. So we shall see. Let me guys know your thoughts on the licenses or kind of this entire like community expectation. Do you think are we getting it? Should I say do you think are we in the right direction, or do you think there is something maybe more important in this great tragedy of the comets? I think we are experiencing, I would say, this maybe a great transformation would be probably the second great transformation of open source on this. Okay, so let's see. Somebody seems to have been pinging me. Let's see. Okay, somebody. Okay, underscore. Let's see. Also in the chat, let me know, at least type 1 or something, that you are alive and not a robot. Or let me know if you remember any of the packages and the issues we talked about, about Faker, left path, all that stuff. Do you remember them when they were happening?
I am back now. I got myself some fruit.
Yeah.
Give me energy as we go through this exhausting topic.
Yeah. Laurie has an interesting comment. Changing MIT to GPL usually causes someone doing MIT fork, or pretty much like anytime somebody changes it from MIT to anything else causes creation of a fork. I think the biggest issue there is that, and I don't remember where it was, but like I was with some lawyers, and they pretty much the consensus was, if it's not like MIT license or something closely similar to it, don't even think about using it for a commercial product.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's why anytime you have, like most recently, like as we started, with MongoDB, and most recently also with Redis, there's dual licensing. That's why you immediately have a MIT fork.
But the Apache license seems to have been used very commonly. I mean, Apache is used.
Yeah, I think Apache might be similar to MIT in that aspect. It's been a while since I really looked too much into it, because I've kind of for the time being settled at MIT. But
okay,
lately I would like a bit more, and I think this is where we are getting as we start, as the community grows bigger, as more players come on in, and there's a lot to talk. but and also non-programming people jump in. That I think it seems that we need to codify more and more kind of what before was a basic social norm and expectation that people adhere to. So,
well, this is typically what happens, right? Which is, norms get violated, and then you need stronger things to enforce them, and that's where either laws or open rules come in. Not open rules, but explicit rules, and we see this happening again and again and again. It's funny. I don't want to veer too much, into this, but the American political system right now is facing that. We had presidential candidates that came in recently, one of whom is a big norm breaker, and the things that would normally constrain you, like shame and so on, don't really work in that environment. And now there's and then it turns out that the system is really fragile. It's how do you hold things in? So let me go back from that, because that's just
I think still speaking about this, I think the MongoDB and Redis license things are a good example of kind of okay, the social norms that we have established did not work, so we need to drop the hammer. Otherwise, we might not have in this case a company in a couple of years. So Alan, take it away.
And by extension, by not having that company, you don't really have proper support or direction for that software anymore. So as I was saying, a few years in, AWS added MongoDB. Then on top of that, they did their own derivation of MongoDB and created DocumentDB. They basically took the source code, stripped out the things that they didn't think were entirely necessary, and then they had their own document database. And then on top of that, what they started telling customers is, you don't need MongoDB. DocumentDB will be sufficient for most of your use cases, so don't worry about it. So the two things that MongoDB found very offensive was, first of all, taking MongoDB and then creating DocumentDB and then saying, okay, by the way, we're going to try to kill your market. And that led to the evolution of like, okay, how can we stop these? And by the way, AWS was not the only company that was out there that was doing this. MLab had taken MongoDB, was hosting it, was making money with it. So the worry was that we're going to have all this proliferation of all of these different hosting services while we're trying to grow. And at the time, they were just starting with Atlas, and they were trying to grow their own hosted application. How do we survive as a company? And that's when they came out with this dual license regime, which is the Affero license. I think they have a much more complex set of offerings now. I don't know it. I haven't paid attention to where they are today, but back then this was big news everywhere. And so what it does allow them to do is it allows you to use the software as a user, as long as you're not commercially benefiting from it. And I think the Affero license at the time basically said that you can't host a competing service, database service using MongoDB there without having a license from us to do so, a commercial license from us to do so. So that was the solution they came up with. It outraged a lot of the smaller players like MLab, but MongoDB bought MLab, so that became a non-issue. But there were some other ones out there. I think Scalingo was using it, right? There were a few others.
Scalingo, and well, now we have whatever or Galaxy actually now is also hosting MongoDB. So not sure how they are doing that.
So I believe that as long as it's not being offered as a primary service, so saying I have a database in a cloud that you can access, but it's offered as part of a product, like it's embedded in the product somehow, then you can do the offer. So if somebody was coming and saying, look, I want to build an application, I want to have either a either a Postgres database or a this database or whatever that I can use with your application, you might run afoul of it in a situation like that. But if it's I need MongoDB in order to make my software run, and it's a core part of it, which you could argue that's how Meteor works, then you could say, okay, well, we'll make available a database for you, because without it, you don't really have a running application, you know. So I think that's where it is. I don't know. Certainly, lawyers need to look at it to make sure that they're compliant with whatever the license terms are. But this is the other side of things. You build something that's valuable, and other people exploit it. They don't really add to it or improve it in any way, and they get all the benefit of the work that you've done without giving something back, and that can be very frustrating. And in the case of companies like Redis, which is a very, as a public company, I think it's a very young company. You want to make sure that you can live. And I know that some of these grow on to be billion-dollar companies and so on, and they're corporate, and we don't like the man, that kind of thing. But at the same time, if they've been primarily responsible for, the innovation that they're bringing to the marketplace and other people are benefiting from it, they have to cover their costs. And we need to find ways to do so. I think there's a balance between, Kasuso, was that his name? Kasuso? I'm probably messing it up even further now. But the vision that he had, that I wanted to build something that I could just share among people, because I adhere to the Stallman, ideal. And the others that are like, we're building software and we want to keep the source code open so that if you have a bug or whatever, you could find it and you can get back to us and we can improve it, so that, we basically have the kimono open. There are no secrets here. You understand how the software works. You can trust it because the source code is available, So there are companies that are doing that and saying, look, we want you to understand what you're getting into. But in order for us to maintain it, in order for us to continue innovating, we need to be paid so that we can hire the right people to do so. We can pay for the services that monitor and examine this, pay for developer tools, and so on. Many people don't think that there's a lot that goes into software development, but all you do is you open a text editor, you write some code, and that's all there is to it. There's a lot more that goes on when you're building commercial systems or even small projects that require some input. So,
this I would say is another issue. How you could say the tech giants made it look that it's super easy, and some of these super programming superstars can make it look like it's super easy, but and also that's also why a lot of companies say, oh, I'll just outsource that to India or to Africa. Everybody of course can go, it's not a big deal, and usually the results are, for those people who are for the outsourcing, very unexpected. I have, at least from people with direct knowledge or from my own experiences, I have yet to hear a story where there wasn't at least quite a huge major issue in this at a minimum, or if it didn't fail over time. So
yeah,
because big part of that is also we're building the software, designing it, is the cultural difference, and that starts playing as you go more into the nuances, and especially if it's piece of software that is not meant to be international.
I don't want to disparage any country or area, because there are
no, that will be the same thing if from India they try to outsource to America or
I think
Southern
it's
America.
Low cost areas, right, where you may have a pool of inexperienced developers. And I've had that experience. I used to run a team in Chennai many years ago. That were, some of them were very good. Some of them were learning as they were going, but they didn't have the resources that you would have elsewhere. I remember visiting the campus in Chennai, and while we were using dual monitors because you have the extra real estate, you could lay out your code in one area, you could have your helper applications in others, and it just made life a lot easier. They were on 15-inch CRT screens, and we were expecting the same level of productivity that we were able to produce for ourselves. And once I got there and I saw the reality of what they were dealing with, it was like, okay, we have to tell them that they have to get at least a second screen. And it's that changes our cost structure. Like, it's not as cheap anymore because they have to make some capital improvements. So it's we had some good developers, we had some very creative things, but also there were some cultural norms. When somebody said yes to me from my team, it didn't mean that, yes, I'm going to do this. It was like, oh, I heard you. That's all it meant. And like, that was frustrating to learn. With different.
So it's a little thing like that. But
Mhm.
the point here is that, especially for people who are not involved, or people who have become expert and super fast in one area, they sometimes tend to forget that not everybody is like them.
That's right.
So they make the impression, oh, it's cheap, it's fast, and that's just is not the case. And but on that would be another topic, or topics, plural here, that we could go into. Let's then return to our dual licensing, and I pull up here the original announcements from Redis, which was also very interesting. That because they got immediately Microsoft Azure
Mm-hmm.
to buy into it, or like even before they announced it and everything.
Yeah.
So that was that really I would say
Yeah, we
they
covered
thought
this.
all about it.
We covered this in one of our episodes, I believe, and
Yes.
and I had made the mistake. I thought that Microsoft had made their announcement the day after Redis announced it, and you pointed out, no, they did it simultaneously. So
Mhm.
it was one of those things where it's like, oh wow, this is, yeah. So there must have been some conversation beforehand. In doing so. And then what
They
happened was
have
the
here.
other part of the open source, the other part of the commercial groups went out and they did a fork on this, didn't they?
Yeah, they did a fork. I believe the fork is out there.
Valkey, right? Is it
It's
Valkey?
maybe.
I think Valkey is the
Yes, Valky.io, or
yeah,
yeah, Valky.io.
and
Let me.
AWS got behind it, and it's like all of these other groups got behind it. They you know, it's amazing to me. So
Yeah.
I think this is one of those cases where, on the one hand, there were people in the open source community that said, I don't like this, right? It's
Mhm.
it's other developers, small developers, that said this doesn't work for me. And it's one of those situations where they're siding with AWS. At the same time, I'm of two minds of this. I think, when I first saw it, my knee-jerk reaction was that, oh, this is just another land grab from a company that wants to get billion-dollar status and keep all the treasure to itself. But on the other hand, I thought, you know what? There are so many of these companies that, and small companies or big companies, even, and I have this view about, well, this is a venture backed company in the first place, right?
Mhm.
So, do I really want to root for them? But here's the thing: at the end of the day, I thought that it was one of the first times I felt like Microsoft was in the right at the outset, which was, you know,
Mhm.
here's an open source company. Here's a tool that we find valuable, we find very useful. Why don't we do the right thing and enter a licensing agreement with them so that we can use it in our products how we want to use it? I don't know exactly what the terms of their agreement is, but if I'm offering it through Azure, I think
Yeah.
it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
I think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. That's how I was also um with MongoDB. That's why I use Atlas. That's why I use Meteor Galaxy, even though it probably would have been cheaper if I had the time and money to set it up on AWS. Is because I want to support a company so that they can put resources into building the open source software to be even better.
Yeah.
And this is supported by the Linux Foundation, or that's kind of how it eventually got. And I'm not sure if it was with Walkie or somebody else. Let me. I think it might have enough people, but I wasn't sure if it was here or something else that did something like this, and it didn't really do as well because it might be in something, maybe fork Docker or something.
Okay.
Because the realization there was like, okay, building software is difficult, especially if it's databases or tools like Docker. It's difficult and expensive.
Yep.
And it's not a child's play, not something that you can do on your weekend unless you want to completely sacrifice your weekends and have no free time whatsoever.
This I don't think is going to be a question that gets. I don't know that we have real answers here in this episode. I think what we can do is bring up the issues and say, all right, what goes to your sense of fairness, because I think the folks that spun off Valkey felt that what Redis was doing was unfair. But I also think that the folks at Redis thought that allowing other companies to just use their software and make money off it and not give something back was to them unfair. And I could see both sides of this. Yeah. So I think it depends on when you're looking at these and saying, okay, should companies adopt, or should projects adopt this dual use license structure? If you adopt it really early, then you kill your open source community, because there's just a sense that, okay, well, you're going to benefit. I've contributed in some way. How am I going to get paid from this? And that's the other part too, on these projects where it's not just the company. Here's the thing, at MongoDB, the only people that contribute to the core product are the engineering team at MongoDB. You can post some suggestions, you can put in a pull request, but at the end of the day, it's a commit from MongoDB, right? That's how they do it. So they say it's open source. It's open source in the sense that you can look at it, you could touch it, you could play it, you could download, you could compile it. You could do that if you want to. But the way back in is through this Jira ticketing system that they control. And at the end of the day, they have a really, really closely guarded, access to.
Well, yeah, they got burned, so they reverted to free as a beer.
Yeah, but even before that, the contributions from outside were incredibly limited on the core. So, and it's always been done through this Jira ticketing system. It was Jira ticks. Like Jira was for everything when I was at MongoDB, and that was in 2015, right? So, that's just how they did it. Where they had projects that had clear open source community, larger community outside of MongoDB contributing, were on the drivers. So, there is a drivers team that manages that, but there were contributions from outside for different types of drivers. So if you go and you take a look at the number of different drivers that MongoDB supports, there are some of them that are, built from the core team, but the majority of them have some significant contributions from outside. I don't believe that they commercialize their drivers in any way. So you could say, all right, well, you could contribute, and MongoDB isn't actually making money directly from the drivers. So, do they owe you something because you wrote the Perl driver?
That goes like into there's a lot of companies that have like some sort of a service, and then they have,
Right.
for example, FileStack. Let me double check. Yes, FileStack. So it's a service to save images or host images or the documents
Mhm.
for your website. But and then they have drivers to do all the uploading and all that stuff,
Yeah.
or get the images displayed, and that's open source. So then that's like, I would say, another category of
Yeah.
of open source, where you have a service and then you have an open source kind of driver or API to it,
Mhm.
which is interesting. And I think to kind of come a little bit more to the closure, because I think we'll definitely revisit this sometime in the future as this evolves.
Yeah.
But I think, I'm not sure. I think it was maybe somebody from the chat, or in one of our previous episodes, or somewhere on X. I think I saw this. Who named it corporate myopia, where that person said, without OSS, companies pay for software. With OSS, companies get software for free. Companies build their product on OSS. Hooray, more money to the shareholders. But what happens when the OSS goes away? When maintainers burn out, what about that one issue the business needs fixed? Many businesses are too short-sighted to see that investing into OSS that they use will help them avoid many of the potential issues of using OSS. By supporting the sustainability of the project they use, they can still reap the benefits, reduce costs versus paid software, whilst reducing the risk. So
I think there's part of that premise that I don't agree with. I think when you're talking about free open source software, yes. But I think that's the confusion, right? There is open source, which means I let you see everything that makes up the software. And then, but it doesn't necessarily mean that, because it's open source, that it can't be a commercial product and you're paying for it. What it allows you to be as a customer is an educated consumer, in a sense, right? It's like, okay, I'm going to buy this thing. You're saying it does this, and you can audit it yourself so that you know that I'm not misrepresenting it to you, right?
Yep.
And if something were to happen because the open source is there, and if we disappear and we don't exist as a company anymore, you could actually take that code, recompile it, make the changes you need, and you fix it and you can go on. I think that is open source. Free open source is a different thing altogether. And I think a lot of open source projects are free open source projects. I make software available, I let you see everything, but on top of that, I don't charge you for using it. And so I don't think that the two things are exactly the same, right? Yeah. I think the economic intentions are different in those cases. And I don't think that you can conflate them and say that all open source projects are free open source projects. I don't think that's the truth. Yeah. And I don't think it has to be the truth.
Well, that's like actually, I think, one of the Stallman's argument from what I remember, railing about say the general open source versus the free open source that he was pushing, or maybe the other way around. So I would say, but in this case, with the myopia, is the one that you can run without, or that as we normally understand, project on GitHub with MIT license, or something similar to that.
Yeah.
And I think for startups, I think they can be forgiven, because especially in the beginning startups, sometimes they don't know if they will be around next month. So that that's fine. But uh, for but for larger companies, especially that have been around for a while, or
Yeah.
for companies that have long or like runway, and they can breathe out, they don't have to constantly be on the treadmill to survive every month. Then yes, I think this becomes a problem. And I think without open source, the cost of most services, which online services today cost a few bucks,
Hmm.
would be at the bare minimum double. I would say even sometimes 10 times that of what they are now, because they would have to either develop all of that stuff themselves
Right.
or buy into a set of tools. Just imagine, like, if Meteor, you have to buy Meteor to get access to Meteor and access to all the packages
Hmm.
around it.
Yeah.
You get like a developer license, then you get license to uh, you know build or like publish applications, all that stuff. uh, that's the cost that you would then project onto the customers.
Yeah.
So
It is, I think we should all step back and take a look at what the world was like, at the start of open source and even before that, when all you could get were commercial licenses and you might have to negotiate, you might have to pay. So, there was a time, for instance, when you might write some program and you ran it on a specific commercial C compiler, right? You compiled it through there. And then if you were going to commercially offer it, or C++ compiler, or maybe it was a Lisp compiler or something like that, um, then you would have to actually pay for the runtime. You'd have to pay a license for the runtime in order to be able to do that. And knowing that you have this cost before you can even go to market limited the amount of ideas that were getting to the marketplace. I think when we take a look at what's happened over the last 25 years in open source, it's nothing less than amazing. I mean, we've gotten to the point now where we have incredibly fast internet. We have all of these different types of services that you can compose and make new products from. There are people that are out there that are building entire companies based on no code applications that they just string together. Um, we're able to, have software interoperate with each other because we have, different types of protocols, some heavy, some lightweight. We have things like DDP that allows us to message, from one Meteor instance to another, and in a very lightweight way that just makes software better, interesting, and allows for people to step up the stack and have higher order ideas and then execute them and get them out the door. You put a lot of commercial friction in between that, and that type of growth just starts shrinking. But in addition to that, you put too much mistrust in the idea of like, well, if I build something and other people use it, where do I stand? And then you start shrinking that community more and more in terms of the people that want to participate in it, because it'll only be the people that have some other ways of commercializing their activity. So it might be that I have a job, a really good paying job, and so I can be beneficent and offer free software. But for the people that don't have those alternatives, maybe they don't have the money you have, they don't live a nice life like you have, then their opportunity to contribute really diminishes, and we lose out as a society for that. And I think, not just because everybody has a good job means that they've got the best ideas, or the best
yeah,
offerings, right? Certainly, for the folks that are in resource limited countries that are trying to resolve those types of problems, somebody in a first world country may never encounter those situations, and so they'll not write free software for that. And so it just keeps that, you know, that disparity in terms of being able to bring as many people forward as possible, so that we're all, you know, able to, you know, build the kinds of things and ideas that we want. I think this is, by the way, one of the arguments I have with Meteor right now is that the majority of us working on Meteor, you know, here's the thing, right? Meteor to me is a productivity tool. It allows you to build applications and build big ideas very effectively, very efficiently, very quickly. There are some underlying portions of that that make it better for certain types of people or people living in certain countries than others. And one is the amount of messaging that has to pass between the client and the server in terms of the amount of data that gets pushed. And so if you're in a data restricted environment, right, then although Meteor solves the problem of building complex ideas quickly, the idea of actually like executing it in your environment can be cost heavy. And so it may not, you know, they may not get the benefit the way you might want them to get the benefit. I think these are things that when I look at Meteor, those are the types of problems that I say, if I were on the team and I could solve that problem, then Meteor has a much broader adoption, especially in, as we say, developing countries.
Mhm.
And we will see ideas come out of there that we didn't see before. One of the stories I love to tell people is a story I remember when MongoDB was very small and it was still called 10gen. There was a meetup that they did, and I think it might either have been a Meteor meetup that this guy came to, or it might have been just a MongoDB. No, it was a MongoDB meetup. And this was when, well, you know what, they're called dumb phones. They're also known as feature phones, right? And you can build applications for them using a protocol called WAP, right? It's, I think it's the Wireless Application Protocol. And, you know, it's tiny markup, not very much, whatever, but you go through a menu and you pick things and whatever. And he was, the guy that came and gave his talk said, look, I'm from, I don't remember if it was Sri Lanka or Bangladesh or someplace like that. And he said, I've built an application and, you know, it's a WAP application. It uses MongoDB to provide real-time information. Now, in those countries at the time, you buy apps through the telecom company, right? So the telecom company has these. So you don't offer it. You go and you offer your application to telecom company. And he had come from, I believe it was a fishing community. And I think I've told the story a couple times. So let me do it faster because I'm giving a lot too much. So in this village, fisherman gets up in the morning, goes out onto the river and fishes, and he comes back. They have a donkey cart or an ox cart that gets the fish from the river to the market. The market may be, there are about 3 or 4 markets. One is 10 miles away, one is 3 miles away, one is 5, you know, you get it, right? And there's no refrigeration. You know, it's fish on an open back of this thing. So they fish very early in the morning. They get the fish onto the cart, and then they race to the marketplace, hoping that they'll get there in time so the fish hasn't decomposed badly, right? And it's still saleable, et cetera, and that they could sell it. The problem is sometimes you get to the market and everybody's at the market, all the other fishermen are in the market. And so you're not going to get the best price for your fish. Okay. So how do you know which market to go to, right? Maybe it's an overcast day, so you could go to the market 10 miles away. You don't have to, and it's not as hot, right? So you could go to the market 10 miles away. You don't have to go to the one that's only 5 miles from you. How do you know? And so the application he came up with was a simple little market app where the people at the markets would have their feature phone also, and he's got his feature phone. And what he could do is he could say, look, I've got 5 grouper, right? Or 5 carp, you know, of this size. Who wants it? And then the people at the market that actually sell the fish to you know, they would bid on it. And then based on the bid, he would say, okay, I'm going to take this one. And then he gets it to that marketplace, right? And it's a simple, you know, somewhat trivial app, but it's real time. So the people at the market know that he has this fish, right? Based on what he's saying. And he knows exactly where to go. So he may be even on transit on a common road until he has to get to that split wherever, right? And be able to say, okay, this is what I got, this is how much I've got, this is what they weigh, this is what they look like. And obviously they couldn't like send pictures. But it's one of those things where, this is a country with very, very limited data in terms of data transmission and data reception capability. And this was one of the things that they built that was being used over there. And I thought, wow, this is like really great and incredible. No one in America would have ever built this app.
Yeah.
Right? Because they don't have the problem. That's not the problem they would have. Right? It was one of those things. And so my thought is like, we need to think about like these other countries where they have limited data. We don't care what it is that they're going to come up with. They're going to come up with something. But if the applications that they're building are going to require a lot of data intensive movement, then you're not going to get the kind of adoption in places like this. So open source. Yeah. So they're going to solve their problems and they're going to write software for their problem set, right? And offer it up. And we want that. But we're going to miss the opportunity for seeing that if we don't give them the tools that allow them to do that. And so the only people that would be writing, open source are people that are well compensated, that don't have to worry about their discomfort. And that's not a world I think we want to have, because then everything is about like, how do I get the next, it's all going to be like Postmates related stuff, solving problems of convenience rather than problems of necessity sometimes is my thought, right? And that's all we'll see as things kind of getting optimized more and more towards that. I could be wrong about the domain, but I think I'd be right about the way it would optimize. And so I think having a balanced open source regime, I think is super important. And we need to figure out like, how do we maintain trust in this environment, and how do we allow people to get the benefit of the work that they're doing if they want it or if they need it, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know that we've had any answers for that, but I think that's I think the eternal question that we're going to come back to time and time again. Hopefully we'll find some point solutions along the way. But this is important.
Just reminded me of something that's hanging above my computer. Let's see. Yes, here it is. Let me share this. Cool. So this is the Programmer's Odd by Robert C. Martin, which I would say kind of sums up the basics of what a good programmer should be.
I don't think I've ever seen this. This is cool.
Yeah, so this is pretty nice. This would be like the kind of Hippocratic oath for doctors, and so on. So I think this is, I think the reason also why we are having this discussion, given the recent issues and scandals that came about, is because we are seeing a transformation, I would say, in this community in how to in the community, because we had first, in the 80s, 90s, that I would call it the Stallman era of the free software.
Yeah.
Then we transition to say open source, and I would say the MIT license era, which I think now is coming to an end, or maybe it has already come to an end and we just haven't really noticed. And that's because of influx of people who have different values, and that creates the tension and also bad actors coming in,
Mhm.
as we have seen. So I think that that's one era, and now with kind of either we are transitioning or we have now a new transition into, and I think this is going to be very interesting because right now we have kind of, let's say, two major things happening. We still have, of course, influx of people and non-programmer actors coming in, be it nation states and more involvement from corporation, all that stuff. Maybe we could have this era start at when Microsoft bought GitHub.
Hmm.
I think that might be a nice date to put it on. So that is the paradigm I think we currently live on, and we still have, since it's relatively recent, have not adapted to it.
Mm.
So, and we still have this influx. So I think we'll see here more, and that's kind of where I'm going. More of the writing down of if you are in open source community, these are the expectation. This is what you should do. We have already seen a lot of code of conducts are part of that.
Sure.
So, and other things. So I think we probably see more of that. I would, personally, I'm looking at some variant of MIT license that codifies the expectations of companies and developers involved with the software.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the same time now, and this is where becoming interesting, we have, say, the older generation of open source developers retiring,
Okay.
or as they are. So that also kind of helps in the change.
Yeah.
And we have now the impact of generative language models, which make a lot of people think, oh, I don't have to be a developer, I can just type it in ChatGPT and it's going to create a website for me. And there's a lot of startups, a lot of money in making this dream happen. So
yeah,
I think there's also going to be, as a result, obviously not immediately, but eventually, a contraction of the programmers community, because people always chase the hot the hot things. So everybody's going to be, instead of programming, learning how to work with AI, all that stuff. Which I hope it will be good for my paycheck, or I might find myself without any work. That's another issue. So I think that's like another thing that's going to have, and to a certain degree already has, an impact on the community as a whole. And that transformation is maybe a bit beyond, but I think it will exacerbate the current problems we have described here as well. So I think establishing more, should I say, more better described rules how to interact with open source, will be crucial. So, and especially like later on with the AI models as well, but that's getting a bit ahead of myself. And I think establishing this, and then another part will be enforcement. Enforcement as well will be crucial to see how we kind of move forward. We can write all the nice licenses and codes of conduct, all that stuff. We can have sponsorship buttons everywhere.
Yeah.
But if we don't kind of enforce these social expectations, then it's just empty words.
I hear you. Look, I think there's going to be a lot of experiments to try to figure out, just what kind of common agreement we can have. I do like the Uncle Bob programmer's oath. I think that perhaps there might be some way of putting together either, an open source manifesto or, you know, um, just like an open source best practice. I don't know if it's a best practice, but certainly like, rules of the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, if you're gonna come in here, you're gonna call yourself an open source developer. This is what you do. If you're gonna call yourself an open source supporter, this is what you do. If you're gonna call yourself an open source user, this is what you do, right? This is what's expected. Not necessarily this is what you do, but this is what's expected, right? This is the basic things that you should do. If you're going to use open source, then acknowledge the developers, right? Find some way to support them. Things like that, I think, are really important. And we talk about that in our program. We said that, some of the ways you could support, there's financial support, but there's also like just reaching out and giving a star on a project, or, liking a project or something like that, acknowledging that you're getting some benefit out of it by doing something. But if you're able to support them financially, then do so. And I think reminding people about this again and again is important. The problem I think that people have is, I use thousands of pieces of open source and I don't have a lot of money. How do I support? And, there've always been these notions, well, like we can have micropayment services. We can use some kind of aggregation platform where, I say, here is $50 a month, and here's the 100 different things that I use. Platform, you go figure it out. Or I apportion some percentage, and it's really not going to be like somebody's going to get 20 cents,
Mm-hmm.
But that's the best I can do. I think situations like that are if there are platforms out there, and then of course the platform gets its VIG, right? It gets its piece for providing that service. So I don't think there are any clean solutions. I think we live in a world, right? We live in the world, and the real world is messy. And even if we try to get a good solution, it's going to probably be a little messy. And we just have to, we all, as much as we want to be idealists, we have to just wake up to the fact that that's just the world that we live in, and that's how it is. So, that's my thought here. I did say hi to a few people from outside, but I don't know if they saw any of it.
Yeah, we have, we are streaming on my channel, on Meet Your Community channel. So sometimes the messages can
they go
not land in the proper place. And also
right.
I'm streaming on X as well. So, but we don't have any, we don't see sadly any comments from X.
That's all right.
There. That said, if you like our discussion, don't forget to leave a like on this video wherever you are watching it. Let us know in the chat if there's something specific that you would like to cover at the end here. If you're watching this as a recording, let us know your thoughts. Every interaction counts. I will be happy to continue discussion, because this discussion is to be continued. I have no illusions that in 2 hours we have covered everything, but I think we had a very interesting discussion. For those who are kind of new to this area, I hope we provided some interesting resources and information, and some history lessons as well. And as I said, we shall see how this is going to evolve in the future, because this is a evolving situation. And I will definitely try to play my part. Recently, I've discovered, I will have to find it again, but there is, talking about, splitting and all that stuff. There is, for example, Tidelift, which is for corporations and companies to ensure that packages they depend on have the necessary backing, support, and finances. especially to address security issues.
That's interesting.
And recently I found kind of like a calculator which analyzes your repository, for dependencies, and then you put in how much you want to invest, and it will tell you, where and how much you should invest in packages, because it looks through your code and does that. I should probably see it in my GitHub activities tab because I gave it access. So
we never really talked about, like, what's some of the benefits of all these open source tools and packages and so on. And it goes back again to building higher order ideas, right? When you don't have to write all that code that we've all like used, but we would all have to write ourselves each time, like the left pad, for instance. You know, I mean, that just makes you so much more productive to be able to say, oh, there's a function out there, that takes care of this. I can just use it rather than, oh, I need to write that, right? Imagine if you had to write your own, like, quick sort from scratch, or, whatever it might be. All of those things take time. So these are problems that have been typically solved over and over again. And somebody says, you know what, let me give you an implementation of this. And if it's good enough, you can use it. And people adopt it and they use it. And it allows them to, instead of spending their time trying to figure out how do I do this implementation, they're able to focus on the business problem, as we call it, instead. And it allows them to build more often, try different ideas, try a whole bunch of different things, and move faster. And the velocity at which we're able to get high order ideas out improves because of this, improves because other people have built these utility code pieces, these packages that solve the problem that, show up again and again and again. And instead of each of us like reinventing the wheel, somebody already puts that wheel out there, so here it is, go use it. I think that just makes your life easier as a developer. And so I don't think we stop often enough to acknowledge that. And if you do, then you'll realize just how much value others are putting out there for your benefit. And at some point we need to acknowledge that, and need to acknowledge the people that are building it. And again, if your company allows you to build open source software as part of your compensation, you put it out there and you don't expect anything, because in terms of financial remuneration, that's fine. That's good. But if you are a person and you say, I have a sponsorship page, it usually means that there is a financial need there someplace. And why not help out? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I found a web page. It's called thanks.dev. Very nice domain, which analyzes, repositories you added, and then you can have, how much you want to add.
What we've been talking about.
Tip and all that stuff, and then it lists here. I don't have it fully configured yet, but also there's like option for maintainers to connect it to their stuff, and so that's another system. And I think I'm adding this to one of many projects that I would love to build for Meteor, and hopefully we'll be able to in some time in the future.
This is a great idea.
Because with Meteor, with the Meteor accounts, it's all integrated. So I should be able to get your. It will be a bit difficult, but go ahead.
No, I was going to say, if you go to the Y menu item, right? Well, I have the hamburger on mine, and when
maybe I need to sign out. So.
Yeah, do you see the Y?
Yes.
Okay, go to the Y. And then the second paragraph at the top, a 2021 report by the Linux Foundation found that 80% of companies use open source and 90% of them rely on it for key parts of their technology stack. Ford also found that open source adoption is continuing to grow, with 71% of respondents saying that they were increasing their use of open source software. I mean, this is telling. If that's all true. I would love to see the source of this, but if that's true, then good reason for finding ways to support the developers in your open source community. And I think actually that this model is not bad. I'm kind of curious, how do they figure out, like, how when you make a donation, how do they figure out how they're gonna
So from my understanding, you link it up to your repositories, and it will analyze. Sadly, it's only for npm dependencies, I believe, and maybe like the usual one. It's not for Meteor. That's something that we will have to fix with Meteor, where it's going to go in. And also, I think it has some issues with monorepos. At least that's what I saw with mine. So it will look through your dependencies. It will probably also look how often I think you import it.
Yeah.
I think it might be written here. Yeah, because this solves who should I donate to and how much should I give them.
Yeah.
And it kind of collates all that information, and then kind of gives you, okay, this is your project that you should be contributing the most to because of your usage of it or of the importance in your code base. And I think if things work out or if they are good, then it should also then kind of show you, okay, but this project, for example, is very well funded while this one doesn't have any funding. So that's the idea. So it's, the solutions are slowly being, kind of built as well.
Sure. Well, this is certainly an interesting model, isn't it?
And it is built after the Log4j incident.
I remember that one too.
So it's relatively recent.
This has been an interesting morning. I have to go because I have some other obligations this afternoon. But thank you for inviting me. And
thank you for coming. I am also going because my voice is about to give out.
Yeah, go take care of your throat and make sure that you're good so that come Friday we can have you back. Yeah,
absolutely. That's set to finalize this up. Alim, where can people find you, or where should they go if they want to hear more from you?
Well, if they want to get in touch with me, I mean, I have a GitHub page. They could reach me there. They can also reach me at Twitter. Everything is Alim Ghaffar. So it's, it's ALIMGAFAR. That's all my social media is that. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. And can I actually, I should have probably put that in before. Am I able to change my? No, I'm not able to do that.
Yeah, you should be,
to, what is that thing called? The thing that you got down below? I didn't do that this time.
Headline. I'll do that for you.
Great. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, you can find me on GitHub there. You can find me on Twitter with that handle. I think that's primarily where I am. You can also find me there on the Meteor Slack channel, and that's also my handle on the Meteor forums. So if you're in the Meteor community, that's where you'll find me right now. And of course, I'm in the, if you want to leave a comment or you want to get in touch with me there, you can go to the Meteor.js community channel on YouTube, and you'll find me there also.
Awesome. That's the people with unique names. I have to use my nickname from my teenage years, which is Storyteller CZ, or is just Storyteller on Meteor, because thankfully there was no other Storyteller there.
Yeah.
And
well, on Facebook, you'll find like there are Middle Easterners that have my name also. So it's Yeah, in the
Well,
West, there are not too many of me, but in the East,
yeah.
that's a Middle East. There's a definite change.
Well, you managed to get your username and everything secure, so
I'm old. I
uh,
could.
yeah, a
What
good
they call that
primary or snake,
first mover advantage is that what they
exactly,
call that?
exactly. With me, it's more unless I have to, unless I make a new nickname, then
Yeah.
that would be different.
Well, I will tell
But
you, there was one domain I wanted to get a long time ago, which was alim.com. And I tried to get that, and it was already taken. And I remember it was like the Association of Long Island Merchants is like, I was like, no.
well, at least they're on Long Island, so they're in the neighborhood.
Yeah, well, that's what bothered me. Like, of all places, why couldn't it be like someplace like really far away? It's it's right where I live. Basically, is what this is, and I'm like, dude, I'm pretty sure I had that name before you even had that association. But it doesn't matter.
Who knows? Anyway, I am Storyteller CZ on social media, and you can also find me on GitHub on the sponsors program, Storyteller CZ. So if you like what I'm doing, want to help me in my recovery from my whooping cough or black cough, as we menacingly call it in Czech, then anything is appreciated. And I will hopefully see you all here on Friday and next Monday for another episodes. And with that,
yeah,
see you guys.
ciao.